Okay. As you can see, it's almost dark here, and I'm painting windows. You've seen me painting some windows already on this job. Well, I've been priming windows on this job, but now I'm actually painting them. Today I sprayed all the ceilings in these rooms, and tomorrow I will cut and roll the walls. I like to do the windows first. I get a sharper edge there. But this is not an instructional video. I grew up in a small town called San Gabriel. If you come to LA and look around, it seems to be one giant sprawl. But in truth, it's a whole bunch of little towns that sort of just got welded together as the space between them filled up. And this particular small town that I came from, San Gabriel, after which the mountains that you could see if you were just on the angle that I am, the mountains out there that are beginning to be eaten up by the gathering darkness, are called the San Gabriels. That's the mountain range there. And the San Gabriel Valley is the other big valley that is in Los Angeles. The first one being, the most famous one being the San Fernando Valley. And in the heart of the San Gabriel Valley is a little town called San Gabriel, and it grew up around a mission. There were a series of missions that were founded in California when it was still the property of the Spanish, and San Gabriel was the third of them that was established. And it was established right around the time that the country was established. I think it was 1771 that the San Gabriel Mission was established. I think it was 1771, so it predates the founding of our nation by a bit. Nobody knows about it in Los Angeles. You can tell people, yeah, I'm from San Gabriel, and they'll look at you blankly. They don't have any sense that the whole Pueblo of Los Angeles, Pueblo de los Ángeles, grew up out of that mission. And nobody knows that. But if you were to go to Hong Kong and mention it to anybody on the street, they would know. They would understand. It had nothing to do with California history. They would know because huge numbers of Asian immigrants are targeting that particular place. That and the surrounding areas. Monterey Park, Alhambra, and other areas are getting swept into it now, like Montebello and places like that. But San Gabriel is the sort of the heart of it, and a place where the best Chinese cuisine in the country can be found. There are more recent Asian immigrants there than any other place in the country that I'm aware of. And that's the town I grew up in. So I bring this up because I want to talk to you a little bit about immigration. Now, my mother was a realtor. She had her office on, most of the period of time that she had her office, it was on Garfield Avenue in Alhambra, which is adjacent to San Gabriel, and actually the town that I was born in. I was born in Alhambra on Garfield and Alhambra Community Hospital, which no longer exists. But my mother embraced the immigration. I wasn't so sure about it. But she loved it because the people that were coming in had money. And they were driving property values up a lot. And they were coming in from Taiwan and Hong Kong. And they generally were people who were funded by what she called family syndicates back in the old country. So they were coming in with resources, these folks were. Most of them spoke English very well, had already taken American names, and they were coming in here to, compete American style and have businesses and, do well, and they did do well. All of that was going on. As I was growing up, that was beginning to kind of pick up. The other immigrant group that we were very aware of were the people coming up from just below the border, and they were Mexicans. When I was a kid, San Gabriel Mission School was just about half, American mutt white boy like me, and half Mexican. I wasn't allowed to say Mexican. My mother wouldn't let me say Mexican. We just had to call them kids. But the truth is they were first generation and second generation Mexican immigrants. It was a Catholic school. In those days, Mexico was considered to be fully a Catholic nation. Not so much anymore. There's a lot of evangelical catching on down there. But the folks that were coming in were, at that point, Mexicans, now are Asians, and they're competing for a piece of the pie, all of them. It's gotten to be a great discussion in our country. What are we going to do about the immigrant problem? And there's never been much political will to deal with it one way or the other. The Republicans really don't want to deal with it because, business is good, and in the Republican view, and Mexican Americans are cheap labor. And the better the labor picture is, the better the profits are at the top. And a lot of those people vote Republican, and a lot of those people have been turning a blind eye to the fact that we've had an immigration problem all these years. On the other side of the spectrum, the Democrats don't want to have anything to do with the immigration problem because they live in mortal fear of ever being called xenophobic or racist. I mean, racist is the F-bomb for Democrats. You call a Democrat a racist and they dissolve in a puddle. It's like they just killed their puppy. So they don't go anywhere near an issue that could get them labeled racist. So there's never been much political will, and we're going to have to deal with it at some point. But it's not the only thing we're having to deal with, and it's not happening in a vacuum. I myself am I am not terribly concerned with the immigrants coming across our southern border. They have shown to me that they are uniformly hardworking people. I don't think they're bringing in much of a crime element at all. There's certainly a crime element going on in Mexico around the drugs, but I've never seen it much up here. The people that are coming across want to work, and many of them are entrepreneurial by nature. They're not that different than the Asian immigrants that are coming in and starting businesses. There is a little bit of a selection in favor of the Asians for entrepreneurship, and that is that it's harder to get here. You have to be better funded, and most people, if they're fleeing poverty, can't get out of Asia to come here. But you can get out of Mexico if you're fleeing poverty. So we don't see a big influence of poor, unskilled Asians. We tend to see more educated Asians coming in as immigrants, and they tend to come in legally because it's not easy to slip across the border. They're more prepared, they're funded, and they are better able to come in and produce right away. So they don't get any heat. But I will tell you, having lived the life that I've lived here and doing what I do for a living, I know a lot of illegal immigrants. I have known a lot of illegal immigrants, and they are very, very hardworking people. They're the kind of people that we need, and they are the kind of people who are better Americans than most of Americans have become. We've gotten soft, and they are not. We've gotten to the place where we don't want to do many jobs. We want to do the easy stuff where it's air conditioned and there's pretty girls around. And they don't really care. They're out there working on Sundays, for God's sake. You see them on the roofs on a hot day working on a Sunday. and they never complain. They work harder than anybody else. But I do want to let you know that they are not simply labor. Many of them are very, very bright and entrepreneurial, and they've got plans. Now, we are suffering all over the country from a sort of emptying out of the cities. You know, Detroit recently went bankrupt. They're a good example of this. I first started thinking about what I'm going to share with you now when reading an article about Bayonne, New Jersey several years ago. And it occurred to me that as the cities empty out, why are we not funneling the illegal immigrants to those cities? And so I started thinking of a couple ways we might do that. Now, right now you've got Detroit. All the businesses have left the city. And homes there, you can buy a house in Detroit for $50. Everything, your whole neighborhoods are boarded up. It's looking bad. No money coming in, no investment coming in. My idea is, you got all of these people already up here who want to be here, who want to work hard, and many of whom are entrepreneurial. Why not cut a deal with the Mexicans and the Guatemalans and, Salvadorans, Hondurans, and give them something, some part of the cities that need people, that need populations. Why not? Why not give them a business, or give them the opportunity to build a business? No interest loans for, to buy a business, inhabit a house, and think about it as sort of an urban homesteading thing, where if they stay there and work and build something for a number of years, they're in. They can stay in America, they can apply for citizenship. But there would be this idea that we put everybody to the back of the line, which is the popular thing. It seems crazy to me. I mean, we've been turning a blind eye to them. To suddenly treat them as if they're criminals after all this time is nuts. You hear, oh, they're living in the shadows. Bullshit. They're not living in the shadows. They're straight out in the open, and they have been my entire life in Southern California. Everybody knows they're here. It's nonsense that they've been sneaking around like criminals. Of course, they got to get across the border. But once they're here, they're not hiding from la migre night and day. They're just working and being Americans. So, if we were to cut a deal with them that they can have something, a business, a house, if they were to build a business. I haven't quite worked out the details, obviously, but they'd have to learn English, and they'd have to live by the laws of the United States, and they'd be, have to pay taxes. I think it would help a lot of things. One of the things that's going on in America, we are very rapidly losing the ability to maintain Social Security, Medicare, because we got really good at living longer at the same time that we bought into this notion that we ought to be cutting the population down to nothing. Paul Ehrlich came out with the population bomb in the 70s and convinced us that we were going to crowd ourselves right into famine by the mid-90s, and everybody panicked and decided we'd just reproduce ourselves but not have any extras, no extra kids. Well, now, Social Security, which was designed for there to be 30 people or so paying in for each one collecting, and that one collecting only collected for a few years and then politely died. Now there's just a few people paying in for each person, and it's going to get a lot worse. And we're going to see here very soon what's going on in Europe. They simply did not reproduce themselves. They can't keep their economies afloat without bringing a whole bunch of people in from mostly Muslim nations, where you've got a big conflict in values. And they're getting a lot of societal problems because of that. Well, the folks from down south, we don't have any conflict in values with them really at all. We get along with them fine. The only barrier to being completely conversant with any of those folks and enjoying them as neighbors is the language barrier. So let's say, learn English, live by American rules, and we'll make cheap business loans available and let you have one of these houses that's going fallow in places like Detroit. You know, set them up, give them a chance, let them become Americans, because what they will do is they will continue to breed in great numbers. They didn't buy the Paul Ehrlich thing. They weren't even paying attention to what some Berkeley professor told them was going to happen. You know, they cranked the babies out. My wife was half Mexican, and the family that I inherited through her, on her mother's side, and then her stepmother's side as well, two big Mexican families. They are, well, Lupe, the woman who mostly raised our kids while we were working, she is now 70-ish and is already a great-grandmother several times over. It spreads out. It's like, you know, the pyramid for Americans is like this. You know, here's the male and the female, and there's just nothing. For Mexican American, the pyramid's like that. You know, they are a genetic Ponzi scheme going on, but in a positive sense. All the stuff that's going on at the bottom pays upward into just a few people. And you have to breed. You have to breed if you're going to have a social safety net. You know, and anybody who doesn't know that wants the safety net to be vibrant and pay everybody, but also wants us to not inhabit the world, is living in a dreamland. You know, so we need somebody that's going to come up here and have children. We need to get these people into America as quick as possible. We need to give them something that they can make better through their efforts in return for their citizenship. We've got to give them something in the deal. I really don't think that they're the beggars in this deal. I think really we are. We need them, in my opinion, more than they need us. But we also need to have them fully productive. So that's my idea, that we should hook them up and get them paying into the tax system and reproducing at a greater rate than we are. You know, they'll produce that 30-person pool that pays into us when we retire. So that's just my thought for tonight. And I trust the Chinese to take care of themselves. Turn this off here. Good night.